Okay, so we're here to talk about distance learning mainly, but I just want to start by saying that we realize that not knowing exactly the plan and the specific schedule and everything related to starting school with this much time still in the school, with just this amount of time left in the summer, is very anxiety inducing. I know it is for me as a parent. And that's the reason that we're here. Um, we want to be able to answer all of your questions. We may not be able to answer every single one, but we'll give it our level best. And on the ones we can't answer yet, we'll either let you know what the current thinking is, when we're expecting some more definitive answers, or we'll go out and research that answer for you. So we want to provide you clarity. We want to, as much as possible, as much as in our sphere of influence, reduce anxiety, provide clarification as it relates to starting the school year on August 12th. And so we'll go ahead and just take a look at the presentation that we have up. Lots of folks still joining us, which I'm taking as a good thing, meaning lots of people are interested and engaged in the school district. So some of the topics we'll cover tonight are shown on the screen. And before I start going through those, I do want to let you know that we have moderators that are monitoring the chat room or the chat box, and that will serve as our question and answer. I would encourage you, please, to listen to the presentation first. We're hopeful that a lot of the questions that you might have will be baked right into the presentation. We don't anticipate that will address every question ahead of time, but we think we'll address a lot of them. So you may want to hold off and see if some of the questions you may have now will be answered in the next 20 minutes or so. At the end of the presentation, though, we'll take a look at the chat feature and see which questions we still have out there, and then we will be able to answer them. And I have my administrative team here with me that are gracious enough to give up part of their evening. And I just have to tell you that the principals and administrators in this district, much like all the other staff, all the other teachers in the district, have gone above and beyond this summer on performing duties that they didn't necessarily have to do, because we all know there's more at stake this summer maybe than ever in the history of public education in this state. So just know that there's a team that is dedicated to making the return to school, even in this digital format, as good as it can be for your children. So the topics that we'll address tonight include kind of the story of this summer related to COVID-19. We'll talk about the key documents that our district has used and is using along the way, the governor's order on July 17th, COVID relief funding, including CARES and learning loss mitigation funds, Senate Bill 98, which attempts to define distance learning for us, schedules for our schools, and the Opal Cliffs Alternative Education home-based learning model. And then what a summer. It's certainly been a roller coaster ride. As you know, at the end of spring, beginning of summer, our district, like almost all districts, were squarely focused on building a hybrid learning model. Hybrid being partially in-person learning and partially distance learning. And we got pretty far along in those plans, even amidst the controversy. In this controversy, I think we can all say there were folks on either extreme. Send all students back to school. Don't send any students back to school. And what we really felt was our responsibility was to try to find a middle ground, a safe middle ground for our students and for our staff. And we really sought that middle ground with the hybrid model that we built. schedules at both the middle school and elementary school, and even did a small sample of summer school with in-person learning at Main Street Elementary School, where we had some special education classes going, some regular summer school classes going, and even worked with one of our partners, Campus Kids Connection, as they ran their summer day camp childcare program at the same site. It really allowed us to have kids come back wearing masks, getting actively screened, including having their temperature checked, social distancing, and allowed us to, in a very small sample size, kind of have a soft opening to dip our toes into the water of hybrid learning. And it was utterly successful, knock on wood. A lot of hard work went into that. Everybody stayed safe and healthy, and we learned a lot. As we were doing this, the national debate grew. We would hear about the reopening of schools, not only in our local news, but it became a national news topic and still is. And so again, we really tried to make sure that the issue was not politicized in our school district, but rather focused on just a couple of principles. One being that in a vacuum, we want children at school. That's something that all parties can agree on. But we don't live in a vacuum, of course, and we're all dealing with this pandemic. And so the second principle we operated on is we only want children back at our school if we can do it safely. So we marched forward with that hybrid learning plan over the course of the summer, but we didn't do it with blinders on. We made sure that we put our efforts into building a plan, all the while monitoring the data so that if we needed to pivot and move towards a distance learning only program, we could do that. And sure enough, as cases across the state and our county spiked, the governor issued his order on July 17th, which was a Friday. And then immediately following that on a Monday, myself and my colleague superintendents from around Santa Cruz County issued a letter saying that we were moving towards distance learning only. All throughout this, we tried to focus, while we keep our eye on a lot of different data points and publications, we also want to make sure that we're focusing on just a few. And while we were in that hybrid learning mode, we really focused on the California Department of Education's Stronger Together document. Along that way, our County Office of Education, which I have to tell you, has been extremely supportive, extremely not only supportive, but able to coordinate all of the districts together so that we're implementing best practices, not just for our students, but for all 40,000 students across our county. The COE put together their document about reopening schools, which goes even more in depth. And of course, along the way, we've been using those documents to help build our own more refined reopening plan, or as we've now termed it, the Return to Learn plan. And we're on version 3.0, and the next version will be coming out soon. So I mentioned that governor's order, which happened on July 17th. And as I said, our superintendent's group issued a letter that soon thereafter that said a lot, but one of the key phrases in there was that it's unlikely to see our students return to in-person learning before January of 2021. We use that term very intentionally, unlikely to return. We don't take that language lightly. We know that pretty much says that we're not coming back to school before January 2021. But we also picked that intentionally because I think any of us could agree that this whole process of monitoring COVID-19 data and the ups and downs of it is unpredictable. And for any of us to say we know exactly for sure 100% what's going to happen 6 months from now, 3 months from now, 1 month from now, 1 week from now, 1 day from now, it's just not possible. So based on everything we know right now, it does not appear that the data is moving in a way that we could consider coming back to schools before January 2021 for in-person learning. One of the things we really wanted to get across was that while there are a lot of opinions regarding this matter, we, as much as possible, wanted to base our decisions on metrics. And the key metric really is the California Department of Public Health's county monitoring list. We knew at that time that we were moving in the direction, the data was moving in the direction to land us on that list. And of course, now we are officially on that list. It's a firm metric and one that in our minds takes opinions from either side out of the equation and base it on a metric that's designed to ensure that we only come back if our staff and students can be safe at school. One of the footnotes, so to speak, of that governor's order was a waiver for elementary schools. And there's been a lot of discussion about that. Sorry for the dingings, if you can hear that. I'm letting people in as we go here. And so the waiver process is one in which a lot of conditions have to be met in order for a district to submit a waiver for their elementary students to come back. And I just want to let you know right now that school districts in our county cannot even get their hands to fill out a waiver. We do not have access to the waiver until many variables are met. One of which, a really important one, which is the availability of testing. Enough testing to ensure that if we were to consider even bringing just our elementary students back to school, that it would be done in a safe environment. And so I can just put it very clearly that the waiver, the elementary school waiver, is not on our radar right now. I just want to be very clear and frank about that. There would have to be a lot of variables. I would say the biggest one is the availability of testing, which is a national and state issue, one that a school district doesn't have control over, of course. And so it is not something on our immediate radar whatsoever, and can only be done if we meet all of those conditions. And even if we get to that point, if many of you have probably taken a look at what's required for a school district to have that waiver approved, all of the groups have to come together, and that includes getting parent input on it, our own school board, district administration, and the labor groups, the teachers union and classified employees union. And so there's several thresholds to go to even get to the point where a district can fill out a waiver in our county. And then there's several more layers to go through if we got to that point to get it approved. So again, just want to be as clear as possible. The waiver is not something that is on our radar right now for consideration. One sort of related item is whether there's an opportunity to bring students back, let's say in a very small group for specific services, or even in a one-to-one setting. And this might be for a student who needs certain services as part of their IEP, or to assess a student to see if they have a learning disability and do an assessment that's one-on-one in nature. We are awaiting guidance on that to see if that's a possibility. Right now, it's not. We have no guidance on it, but there is thinking that, and like a lot of things related to COVID-19, there's not a definitive date. Nobody tells us, hey, next Thursday, you're gonna get this guidance. We just hear that there's a possibility that it's coming. When we get that guidance, we'll take a look at it, we'll interpret it, we'll see if we think it fits for our district and go from there. So that's on the horizon possibly, but I just wanted to let you know that. But that is separate from the waiver. Doing that, bringing a student back on a one-to-one basis because of a special need or something of that nature, different than the elementary waiver, which is intended to bring either whole schools or whole grade levels back to a school. And that's the part that I indicated, not on our radar right now. So all of these things that we're talking about cost money. Everything that as we plan for PPE when we were thinking about hybrid learning, and all of the distance learning, Chromebooks and that sort of thing costs money. And our expert in our district when it comes to fiscal matters is our Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, Michelle Kennedy. So I'm going to turn it over to her.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry, a couple little housekeeping things real quick before I get started. Scott, somehow you got knocked off presentation mode, and so the presentation is not presenting anymore. And just one more quick reminder for everyone new who's joining us, if you could please mute your sound and turn your cameras off, just for a little bit more ease in the flow of the meeting. And admins, please leave your cameras up. Thank you. Thank you. Perfect. Good evening, everyone. So yes, as you know, I presented to staff and parents a little while back when our budget would look like wasn't in such good shape due to our state cuts, and I'm happy to report that the state has come to a new budget proposal which has restored our funding almost back to where it should have been. There are a few things that they're still working on. Part of that relief came with several pots of money. One was SB 117, another was the CARES ESSA funds, which are state funds. Those two together bring the district in about $200,000 in one-time monies. And the newest round of funding from the federal government that was folded into the state budget was what they're calling Learning Loss Mitigation Funding, or LLM funds. These are one-time in nature. For our district, they're roughly $1 million. A good chunk of that money, roughly $900,000 of it, needs to be spent by December 31st. As you can see, the purpose of those funds was to address learning loss, service for pupils based on their learning needs, provide additional academic services, and provide integrated pupil supports to address barriers to learning. All of these things fall under what our students lost in the spring when we switched to a distance learning mode. So this is to help mitigate that with bringing funding into the district to support different platforms and materials and other avenues for the district to support learning in this coming year. And the use of these funds have been discussed amongst various groups in the district, and myself and Scott and Jessica, and Jessica will talk a little bit more about this in her presentation in a bit.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yes. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jessica Kiernan to talk a little bit about Senate Bill 98. Easy for me to say.
Thank you, everyone. And I just want to let you know that I'm on about a 5-second delay. I live up here in the mountains, the beautiful mountains of Santa Cruz. And so while I'm presenting to you, just please know that I have a little bit of a technological impairment. My video is not cooperating, but you can see our screen. And so I just really want to be able to talk to you about some of the other things that influence our shifts in thinking in terms of our students' schedules and our planning for them in the reentry to the school year. So, you know, their health and well-being obviously is something that Scott's addressed, and some of the parameters that are built around that. But there's some current legislation that was signed into law on June 29th of this year, which really required us to pivot our thinking with regard to our learning model, where we were thinking we might do a blended learning model this reentry point of the year. So this Senate bill is many pages long, over 100 pages long, and it's not anticipated that anybody should read it. But fortunately, we have, and there are some significant components in that Senate bill that help us shape our district teams planning for school reentry to the year. So some of the really important elements to this bill that are important to all of us are that there is a required daily live interaction, which we call synchronous teaching and learning time, that's built into each student day. There is a requirement that we maintain 180 instructional days, just like we've done in past years. And There are some additional parameters that are set inside those instructional days. One of them minutes in the course of a day. So some of that will be synchronous, some of it will be asynchronous. That means in time with their teacher and not with their teacher, but doing it kind of on their own or with their family or in their own time. There will be the assurance that students can access internet and that they have the connectivity that's associated with that. Records that we need to keep as a school district, and our staffs will do that. That we provide re-engagement strategies that are for students who are absent 60% more of the time. That we really teach to grade level standards. We're not reviewing standards or reviewing past skills, but that we're building on new skills and creating environments where that can happen. That we support students and serve students with higher levels of need in different ways. And that at the end of the day, we're replacing the LCAP, which is our former local control accountability plan, with a new plan, and that's the attendance and continuity plan. And as we did in past years, looking at all of our stakeholders' input about how to create programs and services and materials that appropriately meet the needs of kids, this attendance and continuity plan will have, similar stakeholder interest groups meet and talk about all of those important things. So to these ends, we're really talking about, okay, so what does my student schedule look like? What is my day gonna look like in this distance learning environment? And we really have taken a look at that deeply. We started taking a look at that deeply this past spring with the focus on a hybrid learning model at that time. We had district teams, we had site-based teams, we had interest groups kind of talking about what school might look like if students were in school for part of the week and not in school part of the week. And as it turns out that, our summer program was a test to that. And we had some really great successes in our summer program testing what that hybrid schedule might look like and what we might be doing in onboarding kids into a school environment during that time. But that hybrid model is no longer an option for us. And that's not because that's a SoCal Union Elementary School decision. That's really a health-related decision that goes beyond us. But what we did do is we pivoted, and our teacher teams came together and said, well, if this is the new normal, if kids are not going to be able to return to school and we are going to go into a distance learning model, what did we learn from last year that we can do differently? What worked for us, what didn't work for us? And let's try to advance our knowledge to provide a new schedule and a new thinking around teaching and learning in this new time. And of course, attending to all of the legislation through that Senate Bill 98. We do have to do some things that we do like, some things that we don't like, some things that you will like, some things that you won't like, and that may or may not work for your family, but are legislated. So we did form some return to learn teams this summer, following the guidance under the Senate Bill 98. The elementary schedule includes daily, morning, synchronous, whole group, and differentiated small group learning blocks. That final draft will be shared for you early next week, and we're really excited about the work that's gone on around that. The new Brighton Middle School schedule was actually shared this week, includes Monday check-ins with all periods, and with odd and even classes on either a Tuesday, Thursday, or a Wednesday, Friday cycle. We've done a lot of work to also prepare our students for re-entry to school this year. So students, they're going to re-enter to school on August 12th. And there's going to be a lot of information, the way that we used to re-enter students when we had brick and mortar, school opening processes. And so we have created a bank of daily student check-in lessons that are really focused on what are the new expectations for us, what are the social and emotional learning components that are going to be really part of our school day to ensure that students feel good about being with us, that they know that they're loved by us and cared for by us. And in those, first few days of school, we are not just going to be checking in with our kids and creating lessons around those expectations and routines, but also training our staff on how to deliver distance learning in a more developed way and in a more intentional way, and how to help them to collaborate across the district so our students are getting some more contiguous kinds of experiences, and so that we can leverage our resources across the district. We're also creating communication plans about school reentry and what the expectations are for students, for ourselves, for our families, the schedules that will be created for our students for the week and for the day, and that they're clearly articulated to our families. And then ways in which we can help families when that schedule doesn't quite meet their interest or their need. And so really trying to work on ways in which we can engage all families in the best possible way. So there's a lot of work that's been done by our staff and our work groups and our staff. And we're, obviously as anxious as every one of you to start the year in a way that we didn't intend to. But know that, together we can help support our students and on the continuum of their learning in the best possible way, knowing that every single student in the state of California is, facing school reentry in different ways. But we've really done our best to think about these plans and really think about what's best for them.
Thank you, Jessica. We are going to move on now to one more component of the reopening puzzle, the return to learn puzzle, and that is a shift we're making at our Opal Cliffs facility. As many of you know, Opal Cliffs has traditionally, I say traditionally, in its short time in existence, has hosted our transitional kindergarten program, a wonderful program. Through a variety of input meetings and idea gathering, the district made a decision to move the transitional program from the Opal Cliffs facility to Santa Cruz Gardens beginning the 2021 school year. And one of the processes we had in mind after that move was to begin an alternative education site, something that we feel has been a missing component in our school district, to have a different learning model available besides just the traditional comprehensive school. And so this is something that many other districts offer, and we wanted to offer to families in our community. And then, of course, as we were beginning to think about starting that program from the ground up, COVID-19 came along, and as we shifted into hybrid planning, we really saw that Opal Cliffs program could have the opportunity to serve those families that, for very understandable reasons, perhaps medical reasons, for example, did not feel safe to send their child back to the in-person learning component of a hybrid learning program. And so it provided us, Opal Cliffs provided us a perfect opportunity to build a program under that school's umbrella and that school's code, where it could be a distance learning only school. And what that would do is give a very clear program to families who are not yet ready to send their children back to in-person learning. And it would also ensure that we weren't overloading our teachers' already very heavy workload so that they might have to track the students who were in hybrid learning and where they were at and what instruction they've received, and also this group of students who maybe were receiving distance learning only. We really felt like our teachers' plates are already full, and we didn't want to add that to them. And so we started building that program. And then, of course, as I've already talked about, we made one more pivot to think about full distance learning only. And we still see that Opal Cliffs serves a very important niche. And that niche is for families who, as we reflect on what Dr. Kiernan shared about Senate Bill 98 and some of the compliance issues, some of the more structured approaches to distance learning that we're required to have in place, we know that there's some families, for a variety of reasons, who may not see that as a fit. And so we wanted to build a program that is still SB 98 compliant. So there still has to be some form of a daily check-in. There still has to be attendance. There still has to be learning on grade level standards, but could be in a more flexible schedule, a more flexible approach. The flip side of that is that it's not going to have quite as much teacher direction. It's going to need to be more of a collaboration between a teacher and a parent, with a lot of input and a lot of oversight from the parent end. So you could say it kind of, not completely, but kind of starts to move in the direction of what we commonly hear referred to as homeschooling. Kind of right up into that, but not all the way up to that. And so we still see it as a very viable model. When we put out an interest form, we had out for about 10 days. We had 120 families respond with interest in the program. A site or district administrator has now reached out and called each and every one of those families so that we could help explain the nuances of the program. Because while we put it out in paper, we understand sometimes we need to be able to talk and ask questions to really process, especially when it's something new. And so we have several families who have either said, yeah, that still is something I'm interested after learning more about it, or no, that's not exactly what I thought it was, and that clarifies it, and no, I'm good at my traditional comprehensive school. And so those have been very fruitful conversations as we make sure that we're matching the right families to this new program, that it's a good match. What we're doing now is, as we finish up those phone calls, there's still some that we have, like in voicemail, need to return the call kind of mode. We're going to end up and see how many families we have that are solidly interested. We're going to match that up with the current staffing plan that we have for it and see whether it's maxed at capacity or not. So at this moment, we've closed the survey consciously because we need to pause that, see what the initial level of interest is, see if it matches up with our initial staffing plan, and then see if we either need to cap the program there or reevaluate. So I don't have an exact date when we'll do that, but I want you to know that right now the input or the interest survey is intentionally closed. We're looking at all of the components of the program, and if we reopen it for further interest, we will make sure that we let everybody know. I'm not, since we had some definite hiccups in getting this started, I'm not going to show the comparison chart of the Opal Cliffs model and our base program. If we need to do that later, we can. It's included in our Return to Learn plan, page 4. It has a nice chart showing the Opal Cliffs home-based learning model compared to the core distance learning model. So we can look at that later if we need to, but it's available on our website. And just for the sake of time, I'm going to skip over that part. And we're going to go to our favorite part of the presentation, and that is question and answer. And I saw just a couple of questions over in the chat box there. So we'll take a look at some of those. We have our moderators, and I'm going to address one as they get ready for the first question. I did see about translation, and I do want to say we're not having translation services tonight, and that is something that's really important to us. I hope that comes through. in almost all of our communication that goes out. There's several reasons. I hope these don't sound like excuses, but staff that traditionally translates for these, we are in summer months, and so we don't have our full staff at our disposal. And also the breadth of this conversation and the number of participants, which are even more than we expected, obviously, don't always lend itself to the back and forth kind of nature, but we are committed to making sure that all of our families will have access to this information in one format or another. So we'll make sure that nobody is left out, even if this particular evening is not translated. So I apologize for that, but I do want you to know that we take that responsibility very seriously to make sure all of our families have access in their language, especially Spanish, since we have a large population of Spanish-speaking parents. So I wanted to address that one before we got to some of the meat and potatoes questions.
Okay, you ready, Scott?
I'm ready. Let's do it. And
All right,
any of my colleagues can jump in.
We've been recording your questions from the chat room through the night, and they will be answered, but they won't be answered necessarily in the order that they came through, because we're trying to put them into kind of categories. So if you do have questions, you can keep them coming, and we will keep answering them as much as we can through the night. So let's go with scheduling or schedule topic. Question would be, why not delay start of school to September 8th or a day after Labor Day? It would give another 4 to 5 weeks to figure stuff out.
I understand the question, especially it relates to the fact that there's so many unknowns related to COVID-19. But I would say a couple really important reasons to stay on point with our calendar. One, SB 98 does require 180 school days. So any pushback that we did would have to be made up later into the next summer. And I would just say that pre-COVID-19, there was a lot of work and a lot of communication to line up our schedules with the district that we feed into, city schools, and get that calendar set. So pushing that back would definitely be a challenge in and of itself. And also, quite honestly, not trying to be a doctor or the specialist analyzing this data, but there does not appear to be any data on the horizon, any analysis of the current data that would suggest that in as soon as a month or so that we're going to be out of the woods. And so for those couple of reasons, we determined to stay on point with the August 12th hard start.
Okay, thank you. And I think you've covered this. Can you confirm the first day of school? Has it changed from August 17th, August 12th?
No,
is there
but
a possibility?
I really appreciate the question, though, because I will take full responsibility for this. I may have inadvertently caused some confusion. So when we were in hybrid planning mode, at that time, school was always planned to start August 12th. Has always been planned to start August 12th while we were planning for hybrid mode, and is starting August 12th while we're in full distance learning mode. The distinction I had made when we were in hybrid planning mode is that the in-person learning component of a hybrid model was going to start on August 18th. The distance learning program, the distance learning half of a hybrid program, was always going to start on August 12th, because again, we have to have those 180 school days. But when we were going to bring students back partially in person, we were going to push that back just a few days to August 18th so that we could continue to carve out professional development and collaboration time for our teachers. Because if you remember in the springtime, the shift that they had to make was almost literally overnight, and turning their entire curriculum and instructional programs onto distance learning platforms. And so we thought bringing students back on campus was a big step in the process, and we thought it would make sense to carve out a little extra time for further collaboration. But now there's no distinction. There is no hybrid program to start the year. There's no distinction in dates. And since we're on a full distance learning model only, school will definitely start August 12th.
Thank you. With distance learning, can we check in anytime during the day, or will it be required to check in routinely around 8 a.m. and then check in for each class?
So we don't have the exact schedules out for elementary, so I don't want to allude to any time. I know that the new Brighton model has gone out, and I don't have those times committed to memory. But what I will say in general, and then either perhaps Craig from New Brighton or Jessica from the elementary can fill in some more of the specifics. But the short answer is yes, there will be like certain times you have to check in, hard and fast times that you need to check in, much more similar to if you think of pre-COVID regular school, you had to be at school at a certain time. There are going to be times where very similarly you have to be on a meet at a certain time.
Can I just chime in on that too, Scott, please?
Please, Craig.
Yeah, with regard to the middle school schedule, that was sent out to parents today. And yes, students are expected to show up for their periods online, 1 through 6 on Monday, and then 1, 3, 5 Tuesday, Thursday, and 2, 4, 6 on Wednesday, Friday. And yes, we're expecting students to log into their Google Classrooms to have some daily live interaction with their teachers. And so yes, they will be expected to show up, and we will be taking attendance because that's we're obligated to take attendance.
Some comments with regard to the elementary schedules, unless Ronnie or Chris will want to do so. And while the elementary schedule hasn't been published, it will be published on or before the 5th of next month, which is next Wednesday. But there will be, under the Senate bill, a required check-in time, synchronous time every morning. And that part is really just basically the law. And attendance is necessary also under that Senate bill. But all of those are built into morning blocks, typically starting around 9 o'clock in the morning. And again, that final schedule will come out to all of you. There will also be some small group blocks that will be built into that morning schedule for students who need some more individualized and differentiated work instruction and support. But they will all be built into that morning block of time.
Thank you, Jessica. Before we go to the next question, I just wanted to check in and thank everybody once again. Looks like we're up to about 166 participants, which is just great for a district our size. And you were really patient and gracious with our technical difficulties. And I just wanted to take a second to say thank you for that. And once we get to this point and we get over those technical hurdles, I just want to say how much I appreciate engaging with families in this way, because it's one thing to put out plans and put out things in writing, but this is where a lot of clarification happens, and we're feeling that, and I hope you're feeling that too. So I just wanted to do that little process check. And let's go on to our next question now, Ronnie.
And this is kind of piggybacking, thank you. This is kind of piggybacking off the last question with wanting us to describe what a distance learning school day would look like for elementary school kids.
So I'll give the short answer in that more structured this year than last year. That's kind of the starting point for all of it, with some time in a synchronous meet, perhaps some time in a small group, and then the rest of the instructional minutes doing assignments. And so that's a very broad stroke, and I'm sure Jessica will want to fill that in with some more detailed color.
So, I mean, absolutely, there are a number of instructional minutes that are aside set through that Senate bill. Obviously, we're going to assure that we meet the letter of the law. But there are some things that the law doesn't talk about. It doesn't say how many minutes of virtual time or synchronous time we're gonna have with kids, and how much asynchronous time in terms of ratio. But really the way that, we're trying to address that need is we're saying, we're going to meet with our students at a set time every day. You're going to know that time. We're going to do whole group instruction for approximately an hour each day. The remainder of that required time is going to be either in small group or doing asynchronous work, which is things that we hope that students can do at home and or with you under your guidance, depending on the developmental appropriateness of that activity. We hope also that in our plans you'll see that there are times when we know that you need flexibility in where that asynchronous time is spent. And so while we know there's a number of minutes that have to be held in the course of a day, some of that has to be flexible based on what you and your family are doing. We're hoping to have that schedule out in the next day or two, but really trying to make sure that it's accurate and appropriate, and that all of our staff have been able to provide their professional input before it comes to you. And I know Ronnie and Carissa, principals at the elementary level, have done an extraordinary task with their groups to talk about what is appropriate for their families that they know and their students that they know. So I would also defer a little bit of that to Ronnie and Carissa, who are on this call tonight.
Yeah, part of what we talked about was having the synchronistic learning happening across the all elementary schools at the same time, so that you have, if you have 3 kids within the district in a TK to 5, they can be all learning on a device, separate devices, with synchronistic learning during that same time, and then go into small groups and then async. But we're still finalizing that schedule and trying to work out what will be best. And then looking at still what's developmentally appropriate for screen time across the grade levels as well.
And Ronnie, I'll just add one thing that we're asking all of our teachers to do is for any live instruction to make sure that that's recorded and posted on the Google Classroom so that you are able to answer or access that at whatever time makes sense for your family. And then the other thing that I want to also add is the way that attendance is going to be recorded is more based on daily interaction with instruction, not necessarily just the live instruction. So we want to be able to meet, the accountability requirements that the state has given us in terms of attendance, but also do it in a way that doesn't penalize families who have parents who are working or really challenging schedules.
Great points, Carissa. Thank you.
I'm ready. Let's
Scott,
go.
you ready? All right. What are electives, and this might even be Craig, what are electives going to look like for New Brighton Middle School? Will woodshop be an elective this semester at New Brighton Middle School?
Yes, we do have wood shop, although it won't look like a traditional wood shop in terms of students working with wood in the wood shop. In fact, calling it wood shop might not be totally accurate. I am actually meeting with Mr. Brodkey, the wood shop teacher, on Monday, so we can brainstorm the kinds of activities that we can do. He's already asked me if he's able to assemble kits that could be picked up by families to work on projects. And so we will have wood shop. It definitely won't be as much woodwork as if it was here on campus. There may be other crafts that they're working on also. But the wood shop elective will be offered. And as I said, I'm meeting with Mr. Brodkey on Monday to brainstorm activities that we can do other than the activities that were offered in spring. And the other part was what will there be electives, Ronnie? If you could repeat the question.
Yeah, make sure I'm not muted here. Yeah, what are electives going to look like? So will there be, and I guess which ones are they going to be the same?
They're going to be the same as they were, and I know that teachers will build on what they did in the springtime. For example, I know that we had the band elective continued to go in distance learning during the springtime. We're still offering band. Spanish will still happen. Enjoying Shakespeare will still happen. Yearbook, I'm going to have to talk to Miss Tomlin about how we can pull that off in a distance learning mode. And I'm just thinking, we have healthy living back this year. I know that many of the activities that happen in healthy living on campus can still happen off campus. The mindfulness, the meditation, the yoga, the outdoor walking, the breathing exercises. I don't know, Ms. Hadris, if you want to add anything else to this question about electives.
No, I think you you answered it pretty well. People
I mean,
can email us anytime if you have any specific questions about electives.
Our teachers are dedicated to providing the most engaging experience they can. And obviously there are certain things that distance learning works better for, but that doesn't mean that we can't strive to make it an engaging curriculum. And I know that our teachers are going to do the best. As I said, I'm already meeting with woodshop teacher on Monday to brainstorm how we can make this a success in a distance learning mode.
And there's a question about band as well. And I don't know if you wanted to touch base a little bit about what Mr. Stewart did last year during the distance learning for band. But he had the students work synchronously. Well, they would individually practice and then come together synchronously, I believe. Isn't that correct, Craig?
Yeah, they would practice outside of meeting times, and when they met, then they would get a chance to play their instruments. They'd hear their classmates play their parts, and vice versa, and it worked. It worked as best as it could in a distance learning manner.
Exactly. Oh, here's a comment right now. Yes, they had a student in band, and it worked very well.
Thank you, whoever posted that comment.
Thank you.
I also saw a question connected, if you don't mind, Christina and Craig, about PE.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it was how will PE work? I saw the question earlier.
Yeah.
Well, so typically they have a couple of days of the week where they're working on fitness and conditioning. And so I envisage that they will go to their lesson. The teacher will give them some instruction on what they need to work on, and they'll work on that. They'll record their activities. They'll record heart rates, and they'll record push-ups, pull-ups, and those kinds of things. They'll be keeping a fitness log. And then there'll also be the regular instruction that happens. For example, I'm thinking, for example, eye-hand coordination activities, eye-foot coordination activities, dance activities. For example, if I'm a physical education teacher in a dance unit, I'll be demonstrating dance steps in this format, and then students will get to practice it also, and the teacher will be watching and observing, and perhaps outside of the lesson they have to work on the dance. They have to record themselves and submit that to the Google Classroom, and those are some of the ways in which the PE will continue to be taught in a distance learning mode.
Craig, there was also a question about AVID, and yes, AVID will be an elective this year as well.
And AVID will continue. It's based on writing, reading, inquiry, organization skills, and collaboration. So those activities all can be done via distance learning. I just want to harp on the point of collaboration. I think that was missing at New Brighton from our spring offering, and that would be where students are actually working with students in small groups, pairs, or small groups. And that's something that we're asking our teachers to make sure they're including student-to-student collaboration in breakout rooms, so that teachers can go into breakout rooms and see how students are working together, so they're engaged with each other and learning and collaborating in that manner. And that'll be part of AVID, but not just AVID, but also humanities, math, and science, and PE, and electives.
Great. Thank you, Christina and Craig. What's next, Ronnie?
Yeah, great information. Thank you. I'm going to combine two. It looks like they're looking for clarity on whether the schedule for face-to-face instruction is going to be consistent, like a 9 to 11 every day, and what would a kindergarten schedule be, And I think we've kind of touched base on this a little bit. I do know that we're trying to do synchronistic learning and the schedule in the morning, like a 9 to noon type thing with the whole group, and then some breakout sessions after that. But it's Scott or Jessica, if you want to add to that.
I think you got the ball rolling well, Ronnie, and I'm going to pause and let Jessica comment on that.
Ronnie, can you repeat that? Thank you.
Yeah, yes, I can. I have to check if I'm not muted always. They're looking for clarity around schedule for face-to-face instruction. So synchronous instruction, is it going to be consistent, like 9 to 11 every day? And what would a kindergarten schedule be?
Perfect. Thank you. So yes, it will be consistent so that families can actually plan their week and plan their days. What we did at the onset of this new pivoting in full distance learning programming style is asked our staff and our administrators to really think about families and how to engage families would be to have a set schedule and a set schedule across the district in case families across the district were engaging in pods or other kinds of student formations in terms of caregiving. And so in our plan currently, we have each grade level having the same synchronous time, the same asynchronous time, and the same small group learning time. So if I was a kindergarten parent, I, in receipt of the schedule, would be able to see that in our school district, my time would be a set time weekly, that I would know when my student is able to log on, meet with their teacher, do group work, socialize with their peers in a large group setting, and then also have a time during that same morning for small groups. If my child was in a need or a skill development group, they would know that time each week, and there would be a set of activities that would be developed around that. So all of those things will be published, known to parents, supported by our staff, supported by our administrators, and then obviously published district-wide.
Thank you, Jessica. And let's go for the next question.
Okay, for incoming TK and K, will there be orientation or something to introduce new families and children to their school and its teachers and administrators?
That'd be wonderful,
I can
Ron.
start this if that's okay, Scott. We did do a welcome to kindergarten or TK video where the principals, the kindergarten team, the office staff were welcoming and showing their faces with masks. And the Main Street one, I know, is just got uploaded to our website. So you can actually watch that now, for better or worse, with us on there. So there will be some kind of video stuff like that. As far as face-to-face, I don't see that we can do that at this point right now.
Thank you, Ronnie. Yeah, and I would say that as we get these schedules down pat for elementary, then we can really delve even further into some of that, filling the gaps. You know, you think just about like last year, I think we all felt for those seniors in high school and our 8th graders, you know, that were transitioning from those big moments and didn't get the full-fledged graduation, even though I think we did great replacement ceremonies. And it's kind of on the other end now with those incoming TK and kindergarten students. We realize that's a momentous life occasion. And while we won't be able to replicate it in person, I'm confident that all of our schools will do everything possible to try to replicate that feeling virtually. So we'll be working on that, and principals will be communicating out to TK and K parents.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, can you confirm what school/curriculum will look like between August 12th and August 17th? So those first few days of school.
Yes, we can. I'm gonna just start the ball rolling, and then Jessica will pick it up. And so we've developed some lessons that will allow students to be engaged and make sure that we start the school year in accordance with SB 98, and simultaneously carving out some very valuable collaboration and professional development time for our teachers. But the specific question is, what will it look like for students? And I think Jessica can speak to that.
Thank you, Scott. And I know there's some comments in the comment box about people's ability to hear me clearly, and I cannot apologize enough for the lack of clarity with that communication. But I do want to respond to the question, because there's been a lot of consideration about how we re-enter students into the school year. I mean, this is an unprecedented time. Students need to know that they're cared for. They need to know that they're loved. They need to know that they're connected to a caring adult in the school community. And so all of our lessons built between August 12th and August 17th are approximate 30 minutes in nature, and they are really built around connection between the students themselves and themselves and their teacher. And so they're all designed to meet the need of the student and the family in terms of, I am cared for, I'm loved, I know what's expected of me, I know what to do when I can't connect, I know how to access my lessons. So we have a subsection of our district leadership team who has been working on creating a bank of lessons that strategically demonstrate that need in the lessons as designed on that approximation of 30 minutes daily. So each day between the 12th and the 17th, the teacher will check in with the student each morning. They will go through these social emotional learning types of experiences and interactions with their fellow classmates and their teacher. And they'll talk about routines and how they feel and how the world is working and how they're working. And then there will be some of those things that will extend to reflection and journaling and thinking and production for the next days. But there will not be any specific academics that will be built into that 12th through 17th time frame.
Thank you for that, Jessica. What's our next question?
How much continuous time would a young student be expected to spend in front of a computer?
Again, I think either we'll start with Jessica, and then perhaps Ronnie or Carissa will want to tag on a little bit with that, or our middle school folks, because it'll differentiate by level.
So I'll speak to a elementary plan as a bit of the design. We know that the distance criteria through the Senate bill says that we have to have virtual time built in with the teacher, which is the synchronous time, and the asynchronous time. The way that the synchronous time, which is the virtual time built in with the teacher, is, again, a whole group instructional time, which is set to be about 60 minutes per day, and of course can fluctuate a tiny bit depending on developmental appropriateness. And then an additional segment of that morning time to be small group differentiated time in smaller allotments of time. And then in the middle school program, there are It's based on period, and I think that Craig and Christina could talk a little bit more about that in detail based on their school schedule that they've just recently sent.
In regular school, students will see all 6 of their teachers, and they are 40-minute periods. And then on Tuesday and Thursday, they'll have their first, third, and fifth period classes. Each of those periods lasts 80 minutes. And then on Wednesday, Friday, they'll have 2, 4, and 6 periods, again, 80 minutes. And we have scheduled break and lunch so that students are getting a chance to get some fresh air and get away from the screen.
I'll just jump in and say, you know, one thing that we've really thought about in terms of instruction is in the same way that if we were in person at the start of the year, teachers go over routines and classroom norms and things like that. And that's the same thing that we'll be doing virtually. And so, you know, we might not start with a whole hour all at once in front of a screen with a live class. We'll work up to that, and teachers will be in communication with you kind of about that scope and sequence and the plan. So that in the same way, if we were in the classroom, we would be working up to things and students would build their stamina and how long they can kind of sit and be sustained working. We'll be doing the same process virtually to really support students moving into that model and being able to be successful with it.
Thank you, Carissa. And I think that's a good opportunity to introduce, sorry about that, Christina. I'll just quickly formally introduce Carissa Lemos, who is officially on this coming Monday, August 3rd, will be the interim principal at Santa Cruz Gardens. Congratulations, Carissa. As many of you know, our current Santa Cruz Gardens principal, Tricia Lee, has found employment in another district and will be taking her talents over the hill, so to speak. But it's very rare that in that occasion where, especially at this time of year, that you have somebody as talented waiting in the wings as we have with Carissa, and she has just stepped right in even before her official start date to grab those reins at Santa Cruz Gardens. So thank you for joining in with us, Carissa, and officially welcome. And now,
thank you. Thrilled to be here.
Thank you, and Christina.
Thank you. Craig, I wasn't sure. I wanted to explain maybe what our vision of an 80-minute period looked like. I don't know if you had done that earlier while I was in the Zoom meeting. I wasn't sure if maybe you touched on that a little bit. Okay, so just for those that are curious, 80 minutes, it's not 80 minutes just looking at a screen. We will be working with teachers, and sort of our vision is, you know, a teacher giving a connecting activity, starting the lesson with getting to know you and community builders, and maybe just review of what students already know about an idea that you want to introduce. Then teachers would introduce the new idea and provide some sort of lesson, perhaps a video, and then there'd be an opportunity for a small group discussions in breakout rooms. We really want to encourage peer-to-peer engagement for students, which teachers did an awesome job last year in our crisis distance learning. But that is one thing that we're really going to encourage, is more of the peer-to-peer collaboration to allow students the opportunity to work together, or maybe individually, asynchronously during that time, and then coming back together if they need to at the end of the class period for an exit ticket and just a quick check-in. And so there's going to be a variety of things done in that 80 minutes where it's not just going to be, you know, direct instruction in front of a screen. And so I just wanted to kind of give a visualization. And Craig, if you wanted to add anything to that.
Collaboration is going to take student-to-student engagement and collaboration, and small group work is going to take our distance learning to the next level. And I don't envisage that children are going to be sitting in front of a screen just watching an adult talk for 80 minutes. That's not engaging at all. There will be some direct instruction from the teacher, just as there would be in a classroom. And the message that we want to get across is we're trying to, as best as we can, mirror what happens in a classroom. Children come in, there's normally a warm-up activity. There'll be some warm-up activity in a distance setting. We'll need to work on connection and social and emotional learning. So students are feeling that connection to the other students as well. There'll be some direct instruction. There'll be some what we call I do, we do, you do. Some demonstration by the teacher of the work, some work with the students, and then students working collaboratively, coming back towards the end of the lesson from the breakout rooms for closure to sort of close that lesson down. Definitely don't want to have a student sitting there watching somebody speak for 80 minutes. That's not what we envisage.
Thank you, Craig. I think we're ready for the next question.
All right. Hopefully, yes, I'm not muted. This is a kind of a long one. Let's see. Please share with us what is known about kinder options given reduced ability of this age to attend a video provided education. I'm hoping we can stay connected to the community, refrain from in-person activities, and have only small 1 to 3 group video calls or very small masked outdoor distance interactions.
So, in terms of options, well, let me first say that I understand the nature of the question. So it's one of those situations where I understand the nature of the question, and then I have to answer it within the parameters that we're limited to. So I understand the nature of the question. Quite frankly, younger students, this is more challenging for learning through a computer screen, no matter all the good work and hard work that we put into it. So that's understood and acknowledged and empathized with. That being said, we still do have to work within the framework of SB 98 and have the synchronous check-in. And if I know one thing, I know that our teachers, and in this case our kindergarten teachers, will make it as developmentally appropriate as humanly possible. But the mechanism of distance learning not matching up well with younger children is acknowledged, and we're gonna find the very best way that's possible to do it. Don't know if that answers the question. I don't think I got some of the 1 to 3 component of that. So maybe you can rephrase the second half of that question, Ronnie, or not
we'll
rephrase
try.
it, or just yeah.
So they'd like to refrain from in-person activities and have only small group video calls. So I guess just small group video calls instead of like whole class is what I'm thinking, or very small masked outdoor distance interactions, which I don't believe is an option at this point with our state of the county right now.
Yeah, exactly right, Ronnie. So that second part, while I think we would, going back to the hybrid learning model, I think we would have all preferred to get some of our children on campus. Not an option now, as you said, Ronnie. And then there will be a small group component of these elementary schedules, but there will also be a full group component. And so perhaps we can just acknowledge that probably the biggest bang for the buck with those younger children are going to be in those small groups.
Yes, agreed. All right, you ready for another question?
Yes, sir.
All right. With students in front of computers for 5 hours a day while in class, is there little or no homework, especially at the middle school?
So I do believe that teachers are cognizant of the challenges of distance learning. And we made that clear in our springtime that we're not looking to overburden families and students. We'll have that same message. That being said, I'm not counting it out of the realm of possibility that there will be some homework assignment in related to the work that they're doing in the online classes. But just like in a normal school setting, if you felt like your child was working excessively long on something, it's always a great idea to communicate that with myself, especially communicate that with the teacher, because our teachers don't want to overburden or overstress families. But having said that, our students will be, they have 240 minutes per day of instruction or synchronous instruction, and there may be some homework associated with humanities or math, but again, if it's excessive, you'd want to talk to the.
Thank you, Craig. Yeah, I think that's definitely an area where traditional school as we knew it before COVID-19 and distance learning are the same. If something's not working, if you want to request some support, talk to your teacher first. Talk to your child's teacher first. With that, I'd like to just do one more little process check. It's 8:09 now. We admittedly got off to a late start because of my technical difficulties, but I think it would be fair to target 8:30 for our hard end, just because these very gracious administrators are giving up their time with their family, and I would like to at least let them tell their kids good night. So we'll target 8:30, try to get as many questions as we can in before then.
Great. Ready?
Let's do it.
Are we having, and we're going to start weeding through, and it looks like Chris is already doing that, weeding through questions that we've already answered. Are we having live instruction for all subjects?
That may be more of a middle school question. Obviously, a self-contained elementary classroom is all subjects by its nature. And so I believe we can, for middle school, say that that is the case too. And Christina, we may need you to chime in on that one because
I'm sorry, I missed the question. I was responding to someone in the chat. What was the question?
It was about will there be live video instruction for all subjects?
Yes. So for every period, the student will be expected to go to the class where attendance will be taken, and a live instruction will be there for that class. So the teacher will be there. And it'll be similar to the schedule Craig and I just described. And we are going to discuss video. I think Carissa gave a perfect example of a situation where someone might not be able to attend the class, and then it would be recorded for viewing for a later time. So that's something that we need to just discuss and figure out how that would work, because last year, there were some issues. You know, obviously it was new for all of us trying to figure out how to record video lessons and give it to students. So that's something that we're going to prioritize and try to help teachers and support teachers in recording their lessons.
And that's true whether it's math or PE.
That's correct.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to combine two here, and I'll answer one of them if that's okay. It says, how big are groups in the live feed for Main Street Elementary? For the distance learning, I'm going to say that you're going to be assigned to a classroom, so it'll be like a regular classroom. So if you're assigned to a second grade teacher, that classroom will be, you know, about 24, 25 kids. So live feed whole group could be 24 to 25 kids if everyone shows up, but then there will be small group breakouts. I don't know if anyone wants to add to that. And then the other part of the question would be, what do Monday check-ins look like at New Brighton Middle School?
What does
I anticipate.
look like? Okay, go ahead, Craig. Yeah.
I anticipate the Monday check-ins. The student has a schedule. They go to the Google Classroom. Part of that Monday check-in will be a check-in connection. How was your weekend? How are things going? A part of it will be to set up the distance learning for the week, the expectations. And in that 40-minute lesson, there may also be time for some instruction and some actual lesson instruction learning, as well as checking in and setting up the week.
Thank you, Craig. What's our next question? I think it's possible that Mr. Platt may have frozen. So
I think it is as well, but I can take over.
thank you.
The next question is, if kindergarten students will be using printed copies, paperwork, can you provide them? A lot of people don't have printers, or that would be a lot of paper. So what is the district planning to do about that?
providing, so this is parents that would have to print something off that was emailed to them or something?
I think it's asking about that, if there's a component of Google Classroom where something needed to be printed, but there's also another kind of related question about, will some classes be providing packets?
Oh, okay. Definitely packets. We definitely did that last year, especially at the primary grades. And so we would intend to support our distance learning program with that again. And I would, and principals can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it is the intention of teachers to either assign something with a packet or assign it digitally, so that that necessary component of printing something out is avoided.
Yeah, I think that's the plan. As far as it sounds, teachers have done it different ways. You know, some teachers have done a survey to see which families prefer what, so that we're not, you know, wasting a bunch of paper. But I know that we are really committed to making sure that people have what they need to access their instruction.
Great. All right.
All right. And these two are related, so I'm going to put them together. Will recorded lessons only show teachers? And then the other part that's kind of related to that is, do students have to have their camera and sound on? Some students don't enjoy that.
I would have to defer to see. I'm trying to remember what a recorded lesson looks like. Would one of our principals maybe know that one?
Yeah, I can try to answer it.
Yeah, go ahead, Krista. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, go ahead, Christina, because I'm going to keep working on these questions.
Yeah, so, that was something that we're going to have to figure out and work out. And that was the piece last year that we were trying to figure out. Can you record a lesson if you are not presenting a Google slideshow or a presentation and you have students' faces on the camera? So those are the things that we're going to be worked out. I think there's a way just to do an audio recording. So that's one of the pieces that we're going to be figuring out and working on with teachers to figure out how to record them safely.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Christina. Next question, can we have teachers in the elementary schools have more similar curriculum so that kids with different teachers can work together in pods if they choose to do so?
Well, I'm sure just about everybody instructionally will might have something to say for this. I will just say that an unintended silver lining of going through all of this is greater collaboration amongst school sites and grade levels, because it's kind of starting from scratch and building the format, if not the actual curriculum. So I would venture to say that we will see a lot more similarities across grades, across teachers, and even across school sites.
Cool, thanks, Scott. The next question, I'm going to read it, and then if it's okay with you, just answer it. Since we're likely taking attendance daily, how will students avoid being penalized for unstable internet, etc.? And that one, we kind of talked about it earlier, but communication is key. Attendance is based on engagement, not necessarily presence for live instruction. So in that case, you just want to get in touch with your teacher in whatever way you can. And you know, like you said, you might not have internet or phone or whatever that day. So then the next day, you can just get in touch with them and let them know, hey, this is what we did yesterday. You know, my kid was working, but we didn't have internet, that sort of thing. So we'll definitely be working to make accommodations for that sort of situation. All right, we're kind of getting into a SPED section, so I'm going to try to just group as many questions together as we can. And I saw Mr. Olson pop up there, his ears perked up. And they're all really just about kind of the delivery of special ed services. You talked a little bit earlier about one-to-one services. Also, there was a question about students who either have a pending assessment or who the parent suspects that an assessment might be necessary.
Yeah, great questions. And I saw also that it was a good idea about a town hall special ed meeting. That was great. And I will take that into consideration too and check in with County SELPA. Maybe they can tag team with that. But yeah, the students who have special services are all of our students, and we care about all of our students, especially the ones that have special services. And the IEP will be delivered as best we can, and with the maximum extent possible with the required state and federal guidelines, right? And future guidance that we'll get as well. we're waiting on some future guidance to come out. The guidance has been slow coming, so we're trying to, get them to give us more guidance. But distance learning has not been very successful for our students in this area, and we really do sympathize with that. As far as the IEP services, we are going to do our best to give those and deliver those to our families, and our staff will be communicating that as well, as similarly as our general education staff will communicate that. And so I know there's a lot of questions about services and how will this be done, and distance learning didn't work, and curriculum needs to be printed, and very, very good questions and things our team is going to consider. And we will communicate that out. And Carissa, I'm losing the other part of that question, I think.
No problem. It was about students who either have a pending assessment or maybe their parent suspects assessment may be warranted or needed. Will the district be doing assessments?
Right. So assessments have been halted due to no in-person contact for now. We're waiting on guidance for that, as far as we want to be able to give our assessments in person due to the reliability of the data and testing. So there are some assessments we can do virtually, but unfortunately not all of them, and we need to compile a good test to be able to do that. So we would love to handle that, and that's the guidance that we're waiting on as well, to do in-person assessments.
Thanks, Eric. One last question I saw, and this might be for you, or Scott, maybe for you. There was a question about what SPED services would look like for students in the alt ed program at Opal Cliffs.
So getting the program up and running, we'd really need to define our student population first. But that being said, the IEP team is always what drives a student with a learning disability, not only their services, but where those services may best be met. So once we identify that first wave of families who are truly interested in enrolling at Opal Cliffs in that alternative program, we'll then take a look at any student with an IEP and make sure that we're able to meet their service needs at the school.
All right, I apologize, I'm slow. I lost my partner. Okay.
You're doing great, thank you.
There was a question about this. These two are kind of related. It's about childcare. We've talked about it a little bit, but for working parents, how will SUESD support the learning of their child so that they can remain gainfully employed and also have their child continue to meet grade level expectations? And then there's a question also asked for teachers with children. How are they going to teach their own kids?
So, boy, that is the biggest question in this whole puzzle, in my humble opinion. From the very beginning, up and through when we were considering hybrid, and now. And so I had mentioned earlier that we do have a child care task force. We think it's pretty well represented. There are going to be some additional options. Big shout out to the City of Capitola and CKC for working with us. City of Capitola has even stretched out beyond the City of Capitola and is looking at providing elementary, and none of our elementary schools are in Capitola. That's why I emphasize that. Looking at providing some elementary aged child care. And so that's part of the equation, is we're just trying to ask the right questions, because I don't think any district has an easy answer to the child care issue that is imposed upon us with COVID-19 and distance learning. To take it out even a little broader, and this, maybe a bit of a soapbox, but I don't think it's just a school district's or a school system's responsibility to help answer this question. We want to do what we can. We think we have the right players at the table asking the right questions, trying to do what we can. But I do think it's a societal issue, and I think it's a responsibility of employers to reconsider that flexibility that's needed for parents as well, not just the school district. So I think this is an opportunity for everybody in a community to come together to try to answer that question. We're trying to answer it the best we can, and for teachers and staff, because we have classified staff that have children as well, school-age children, and many have school-age children in our own district. And we've made some accommodations to try to make their work life and their life supporting their own children as flexible as possible, and made some accommodations for them.
All right, let me jump to the next one. We are to Alt-Ed Opal Cliffs, to that section. So I'm going to try to group these questions as much as I can to honor everybody's time. There's some questions about for individuals who have expressed interest but not yet received a call. Is that going to happen? And then when will those individuals be able to know if they are going to be able to be included in the program?
Yeah, we're targeting that same date of Wednesday, August 5th, to let everybody know for sure that has expressed, even after a phone call, that they're interested in the Opal Cliffs program. And so we'll need to go back and double check our list. At last check, it had appeared to me that we had at least initiated a call to every family that had expressed interest. Now, as I said, some of those we left a voicemail and we're waiting for a return call. And there's always the chance that, perhaps the number was entered wrong, perhaps we dialed it wrong, something of that nature. So there may be one or two oversights out there. We'll go back and comb through that list, see if we might be able to follow up with an email, to make sure we're not overlooking anybody. But we'll double check that. We'll target this coming Wednesday as the date to let families know for sure whether they're in that program, and we'll go from there.
And I'm back. I got kicked off. I don't know what happened, but I'm back. I got my hotspot going now, so just to make sure. Sorry.
No worries. Thank you.
And then the Opal Cliffs thing, I think I came in on that. We did actually have, at least on some of the Main Street ones, there was no number. There was a contact name, but there was no actual number to contact. So I will be reaching out tomorrow to those that didn't leave numbers by trying to find them within the our student database by searching parent contact or advanced contacts there.
And I just saw the question come up about Opal Cliffs in relation to medical issues. And so it's a really good clarification. I'm glad I caught it out of the corner of my eye, because we realized when we were in hybrid planning mode, as I had said, that Opal Cliffs may be the alternative for families in that situation. It's not right now intended for that, considering the fact that no students are expected to come for in-person learning, right? So it's not meeting a need of avoiding coming for in-person learning. And so that wouldn't be like necessarily a reason to jump to the top of the list or something of that nature, just to be clear, because at this point, we're doing distance learning for the foreseeable future.
Thanks, Scott. This is the kind of the last Opal Cliffs question. Yeah. And it can go either way. There's some of both. If distance learning isn't working, is it possible to move over to Opal Cliffs? Or if somebody is enrolled in Alt-Ed at Opal Cliffs, will they be able to go back over to distance learning or in-person learning?
Another helpful question. So let's start with the second one. If you're in the Opal Cliffs program and it just wasn't working out, could you switch over? The short answer is yes. We wouldn't lock a family into something that's not working. That being said, we would at least counsel and work with families to acknowledge that if families are coming in and out rapidly, that's not going to be good for the children, most importantly, and it's not going to be good for the program. So where it may be an instance in some instances, in a few instances where it's the right thing to do, we will just want to try to keep some stability in the program to give it a chance to work. And could it go the other way? Could a child, let's say in one of our comprehensive schools, and the family wishes to move over to Opal Cliffs? It really depends on these over the next week or so, as we finalize the list, compare it to our current staffing projections, and see what the capacity of the program is. I'll be honest, right now, this is not a certainty, but as we look at the program, it looks to be having gained some real momentum, and it's looking to me like we might have to cap the program. And so if that were the case, then there would not be room to move in mid-year. And if there were any room, we would probably have some families already on a waiting list. So, but we may look at the numbers and say we need to reconsider our staffing plans or something of that nature. So that's not written in stone, but that's kind of where it's looking right now, that the program may max out pretty quick.
All right, let me look here. There's been a lot of questions about how can parents help? How can home and school clubs help? There's been some questions about setting up Facebook groups and social media groups for parents to share resources and strategies of how things have been working at home. What would the best way be for people to go about doing that?
That is something that our Jessica has been working on, and I think we'll have some good suggestions to share with us. Unless I lost her. Where the corner she used to be in for me is somebody else now.
There's a question about outdoor school. Any thoughts on outdoor school? Outdoor school is probably, sorry, Scott, you want to take this?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like the traditional kind of 5th grade outdoor school.
Yeah.
It pains me to say, not looking likely.
Can I take a moment to answer a Spanish question that was asked in Spanish?
Sí.
There was a question asked about how we're going to distribute materials to students in 7th grade. And we are going to have 3 distribution days at New Brighton Middle School where families can come and pick up textbooks, Chromebooks, and other materials. I'm just going to answer that in Spanish, okay?
Okay.
Voy a hacer una respuesta por una pregunta en español y estamos planeando tener 3 días de distribución donde las familias vendrán a New Brighton Middle School para recoger materiales como libros, como Chromebooks y otros materiales. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Maybe we'll shoot for 2 or 3 more questions before we wrap up.
Okay, I guess I'll go for this one. I don't know where we were.
Ronnie, can I interrupt you for a second? I'm so sorry.
Yes.
I saw that Jessica popped in and said that she is on, just not on my screen for whatever reason, the way it's configured. And so I think that she'll want to talk a little bit about the question about what can parents do at home to best support distance learning.
Thank you, Scott. Actually, posted on our district website will be a podcast tomorrow that actually one of the specific questions that we talk about in that interview is how best to support students at home. I think first, just make sure that you have a growth mindset. You know, that we're all on the continuum of learning. This may be not as easy as it should be right now, but we're going to get better at it and we are going to master it no matter whether we're a student or an adult, teacher or family. Also setting aside a very kind of structured office space for your student to be free of distractions as much as possible, while we know that that's not completely possible at home. But to do the best we can to make sure that you have a direct communication with the teacher and the school when you have questions about how to best support your child in what's needed for them in terms of curriculum and materials, and how to access things online or offline is so important. And then I think also really how to kind of best support The connection between families and students is to be able to really access your teacher when questions come up. Don't wait. If you really are having difficulties engaging, if time is an element, if you're worried about attendance, if you're worried about, you know, any of those things, that's why we're here. So your schools and your teacher and our school district, you can access anytime. I've put my email in the chat probably about 30 minutes ago. You can contact me at any time. Our principals are very open. Our staff are very open. So really just kind of knowing what's expected, knowing the schedule as it comes out to you, knowing the materials that are available to you and how to access them. But most importantly, just make sure that you are attending to the wellness of your family, the health of your family, and ensuring, you know, that your child knows that, you know, we are there, we're connected, we're partners. Those are the most important things.
I saw some questions about supplies and such, and so it might be a good opportunity to give Michelle. Michelle usually has a lot of questions, and not much about money tonight, Michelle. So I didn't want to leave you out. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the supply bags that families will be getting, and that might help inform where they might be augmented.
Yes, hi, good evening. I know, and I understand where everyone's focus is tonight. So I'm not heartbroken, I promise. But yes, just as a quick mention to that, part of the learning loss mitigation funding that we're receiving is to help support students at home with what they're calling home office kits. And so your principals and your leadership teams at the schools and the district office, we've been working together to see what that looks like. And we're getting a list together, and we will have bags of supplies and different things for students. We don't have an exact listing quite yet of what that will look like, but your principals will be communicating that with you guys for pickup. And just as another quick mention for Child Nutrition Services, even though we will be in full distance learning at the beginning of the year, we will still be providing meals for students, and we're sending out information to all parents to let them know what that's going to look like.
Awesome. Should we pick one last question to wrap it up on? No pressure. Make it a good one.
Ooh, that's a lot of pressure.
And I'll just, while you look for the last question, I'll just remind everybody, I've seen it in the chat room. All of our administrators are, you know, very open about receiving emails. So the communication doesn't end when this town hall ends. This is just one form of many channels of communication. Email me, email your site principal, email any of these administrators, and we'll get back to you with some answers.
Okay, I'm weeding through here. Looks like we have a lot of other ones, so I'll look there. How will you address the social development of the kids in elementary? We are not native English speaking family. And for us, it's important our kids to spend as much time with other kids as they can. So the socialization and probably the immersion of English in that.
Yeah. So I would just say, yeah, the socialization part is definitely, I guess, almost an impossible question to answer given our current circumstances. I think Mr. Broadhurst alluded to it, and others did too, that as we learn more about distance learning, trying to create not just teacher to student and student to teacher interaction, but student to student is an important next step. I'll say next step. I know it was already happening, but for it to happen even more. But granted, that's not the same as the nuances of being in person. So I think we do everything we can to replicate that as much as we humanly can through a computer screen. And then ELD is a definite part of our overall program in regular times, English language development. And it is also part of Senate Bill 98 that we continue to make sure that we are delivering those services. And so we continue to do that, whether we're in person or whether we're doing distance learning.
And Scott, if I can just jump in there with a related question about what instruction will look like the 12th to the 17th of August. And so much of the plans that have been developed for that time are all about social emotional learning and building that foundational connection to, like Scott said, between teacher and student, and also between students and each other. Our teachers work so hard to base their instruction on best practices. And what we are learning quickly is that best practice depends on the forum for instruction. And so our teachers are hard at work volunteering a lot of their summers to learn how to do just that. And so it's definitely on our minds. And I know that we're working hard to make sure that that happens with your students in class.
What a perfect note to end on, because I will say that our district has invested significant energy in what Carissa just said, and that social emotional learning. And everybody has acknowledged how even more important that is with what we're going through. So perfect note to end on. And again, please don't hesitate to email any of us, first initial, last name at suesd.org. We're really easy to find, and our communication doesn't end here. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, administrators, for giving up your evening. Everybody have a great night.